Hola, fight fans. It's your boy Noah here with another edition of the Countout. And you know, man, it ain't no time for bullshitting. We just gonna get right into it. You know what I'm saying? Right at number 10 in a fairly one-sided contest. What felt like a one-sided contest. Ricochet, in another edition of his magnificence, defended his Intercontinental title against Shanky this week. And let's just say, 20'10" Shanky was definitely getting the best of Ricochet in this contest. I was pulling for Ricochet the whole time, of course, because if you've been paying attention to the series since its inception, I'm a huge Ricochet fan, and I'm hoping they continue this push. But it did not look good for him in this bout, because not only did he have to face the big Shank Ali, he also had to deal with interference in the background with Jinder Mahal, the modern day Maharaja, the modern day asshole. I hate that man. But thankfully, my boy Ricochet pulled it off this week, and he is still your Intercontinental Champion. Had me worried just a little bit. Not much. I figured he would pull it out. But with WWE, you just never know. You never know. And I really hope he continues on this amazing run for a little while longer, because he has really added some credibility to the Intercontinental Championship. Continuously doing open challenges and, defending it every week and showing his skill, because that brother he's tough. But moving on to number 9. Spoiler alert. Mustafa Ali Returned. It was a great return. And after a hard-fought battle against The Miz and beating The Miz, after, he couldn't really celebrate for long because he was attacked by Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa, because WWE loves either changing names, or they are changing your name, but they're either, switching it from where you were to another spectrum, or they just like to take the first name away from your name, so you're left with your last name, like Ciampa, and what was Ali, and what now is Theory. But I digress. We deviating away from the conversation a little bit too much. But Ciampa attacked Ali and seemingly turned heel. Very interesting. He stood over Ali, and that was the last image of that segment. Where might he go next from this? I find it interesting, though, that at the end of this segment, they segued into what I have at number 8 for this week, and that is Ria Ripley. This week, she had an interview with homegirl. I don't know what her name is, but they had her backstage interviewing so that Rhea could rationalize her attack on Liv Morgan last week, because they lost their opportunity to gain the women's tag titles. And Rhea Ripley was tired of it. She about had it with not just, I don't think, Liv Morgan, but I think she had just been tired of where she was going in life. You know what I mean? And so she blamed it on Liv Morgan because it just so happened to be her partner at the time. And she attacked Liv Morgan from behind and destroyed her. So they had Rhea on there to pretty much rationalize her attack and allowed her a chance to speak and explain herself. And she said, look, When I came onto the main roster, I won the Raw Women's Championship on my own. And then I got thrown into the tag team division like I was a throwaway. And I've been stuck with partners that ain't getting me nowhere and ain't getting me no championships. Fuck that shit. I am going back on my own. And I'm going to go back to the mountaintop. Wink, wink. The mountain of omnipotence, wink, wink, by myself, because I don't need nobody. And so during her explanation, Liv Morgan came out of nowhere and interjected the interview by attacking Rhea Ripley in hopes of gaining some retribution. Sorry, I can't speak. Some revenge, And the reason why I say it's a little interesting that Ciampa's attack segued into Rhea Ripley's interview, because there are some rumors that the formerly known Rated R superstar Edge is getting his own stable that far exceeds just himself and Damian Priest. He also might be getting Ciampa and Rhea Ripley. And I don't think WWE would do that on purpose, to have Ciampa, to have his attack segue into Rhea Ripley's heel turn, or the interview about her heel turn. Usually when WWE does those things, it's not on accident. It's on purpose. It's to tease. And only the smart, only the ones who are paying attention understand that. So I just find it interesting, I'm very interested in potentially seeing what the four of them can do. Drop in the comments. Let me know what you think about the stable. We kind of talking about this on the All Real Crew, and we kind of fantasy booked and conjured up a stable that could potentially combat Judgment Day, and that's how we got on Death by Dewdrop, which was crazy as shit. But nevertheless, we're gonna move on to number 7, and as I mentioned before, Ali returned. Mustafa Ali. Now, he was happy to be back. The crowd was happy to be back, but the segment started with Gum's Theory and The Miz on Miz TV. This week's edition of Miz TV saw The Miz interview the new United States champion, Gum's Theory, Tijon's favorite wrestler in the whole wide world. Second favorite. His favorite is Seth, but his second favorite is Austin Theory, or now just Theory. And The Miz, they're going back and forth, sucking each other, talking about, I look at you and I see myself and all this other bullshit, talking about, you add legitimacy to the title. The first time I've ever seen it be legitimized since, in 12 years. And Theory talking about all this shit like, oh, weren't you champion 12 years ago? All this. Yeah, they were sucking each other hard. But nevertheless, to interrupt this bromance, the returning Ali came out and interrupted that because he said, he heard that Austin Theory might be issuing out an open challenge for his belt. And, The Miz and Theory were joking because, the real story is that Ali stepped away. He had asked for his release out of WWE for reasons that I can't quite remember, and I don't want to sit here and make them up. But I do remember reading something about him wanting to, take a stand for some political issues. It had nothing to do with, his stunted growth in the company. It had everything to do with something much bigger than him. But, he came back nevertheless, which was a big surprise for everybody. to me, it was even more shocking than another return that might end up on this list. But The Miz, in theory, of course, we're going to crack jokes on my man's Ali. Even going as far as saying, are you Mustafa Ali, the little brother of Mustafa Ali? Which was a bad joke. I got it. But it was a bad joke nevertheless. And my man Ali clapped back at him, and he was just like, "Yo, if I wanted to joke around, if I wanted to laugh, I just watch you wrestle," which is true. Anyways, my man Ali was like, "I ain't playing around. I just heard that you was issuing out challenges for that belt, boy. So I need that. I need the first shot at the belt." And so, they were going back and forth with some good, hard roast. Like, they was going at it. Like I said, Miz was just like, weren't you supposed to be having weren't you supposed to get your walking papers, or didn't you take your ball and go home? And Ali was just like, yeah, all the shit. I said it before. But Ali was like, you talking all this trash. Why don't you put that United States Championship up there? You all He literally said verbatim, and I quote, do you not have a spine? Are you all biceps, no balls? And my man Theory was sick. He was sick. And The Miz, as you can see his hand, holds back the champ because he's sticking up for the champ. And he says, you pretty much don't come for him like that. You are back after some months, and you feel like you can just step across the line and move up the ladder without having done anything since you've been gone. And, he was just like, I'll whoop your ass. And so Theory texted Mr. McMahon. It was like, I got you. We'll get you a match. Miz didn't like that, of course. He didn't really want the match because he's pussy. But he got it. And like I said earlier, later, like right after that segment ended, Ali beat him. Good for Ali. I'm happy to see him back. I hope he gets pushed a little bit. He probably won't, but we'll see. However, we're gonna move on to number 6, and that's sick ass Joe Gacy. Love it. Love it. On this week's episode of NXT, Bray Wyatt Jr. came out and was pretty much, making his proclamation to the NXT crowd in the WWE universe about his quest for the NXT championship, and that being a part of his mission, to establish his vision and see his vision through on how he sees the world today, and all this other bullshit that sounds like Bray Wyatt would say. Did I say he was Bray Wyatt Jr.? But he's a psycho. For those who haven't been watching NXT that much, he and Braun Breaker, who is the NXT champion, have been in a little program for the past few weeks. Joe Gacy's been playing some crazy ass mind games, like holding Rick Steiner, who is Braun Breaker's father, in a cell, burning his fucking Hall of Fame ring. I mean, he pushed Braun Breaker off like a stage and all this other shit. And so this week, while Joe Gacy, Bray Wyatt Jr., is wrapping up the crowd, talking about some shit that a lot of people, 99% of the people, will just never understand because it's just way too cryptic. It's like you almost got to decode the shit to understand what he's saying. Rick Steiner came out. Yeah, Rick Steiner came out to confront Joe Gacy, and Joe Gacy was just like, oh, you picked a great time. Or did you pick the worst possible time? as Joe Gacy's wannabe Undertaker druids surrounded the ring, Shield style. Braun Breaker's music hit so he could save his father, and he came out wrecking all of the druids. But the druids were just enough a distraction for Gacy to lay Braun Breaker out, which created a pretty different visual. I've never seen Undertaker's druids do this, which is why this made it on the list. I swear, if Undertaker and Bray Wyatt had a baby, it's Joe Gacy. It is turning into Joe Gacy. Even though he is more of Bray Wyatt Jr. than he is The Undertaker, they're starting to combine a little bit of elements from The Undertaker and a lot of bit of elements from Bray Wyatt, and they made him Joe Gacy. So the Druids line up in a single file line up the aisle, grab the NXT Championship. They pass it down one by one to the ring, where at the end, Joe Gacy is waiting for the belt, and he hoists it up to end the segment. It was an interesting segment because I'd never seen Undertaker's druids used in such a fashion. So I guess I'll give him some brownie points for being different, for the WWE to be different this time. But bruh is still Bray Wyatt Jr. Anyways, we are going to move on to number 5, and that is Becky Lynch is off the rails. She cut a promo this week talking about how she just does not feel the same anymore without a belt. It had been 3 years since she had walked around with no strap. Pause. Since she had walked away with no title on her shoulder, on her waist. And, she felt different. She looked in the mirror and she didn't even see herself anymore. She didn't even know who she was. And so she claimed that she hit rock bottom. But then she had this big epiphany talking about, if you hit rock bottom, that means the only place you could go is up, which is very true, Becky, which is very true. And I'm happy that she realized that really fast and really quickly. And she seemed to make a turn really fast, really quickly. So happy for her. And as she's spewing all of this stuff out of her mouth, some familiar music hits. And her face was just as shocked as mine, because the music was that of one returning Empress of Tomorrow, Asuka. We have not seen Asuka in almost a year, I want to say. It's been a while. It's been a long, long time. But I'm very happy to see her back. The crowd was very happy to see her back. Very shocked to see her back. And she hopped on that mic and was just like, I'm going to stop you. Whatever that means. We know there's a language divide. And so that I will stop you. While it's straightforward, it could mean a lot of things, because why would you want to stop Becky Lynch? She's already been stopped, 1. 2, y'all haven't done anything. So I'm confused. But it don't matter. It's going to set up a nice little match between the two of them. And it's an interesting backstory because if you don't remember, Asuka was the one who Becky Lynch handed the title over to before she stepped away for maternity leave. Yeah, so I wonder if they're going to use that as a way to develop the story between the two of them. I don't know. But we will see. To end the segment, Becky Lynch took a swing like a dummy because she apparently doesn't know that Asuka is like the best striker in the women's division. She missed. Thankfully, she dodged and ducked Asuka's attack, and she made a retreat. So like I just said, we will see what happens between the two of them. Hopefully it creates a match that goes on the Backlash card. Probably will. But nevertheless, we're going to move on to number 4. And that is Paul Heyman backstage with Adam Pearce proposing a historic 6-man tag unification match where the winner takes all that unifies the Universal Championship and WWE Championship are already unified, but Drew McIntyre is trying to take it. Oops, spoiler. The Usos and RK Bro are trying to unify their tag team championships. Now, like I said, this has to be on the list. It has to be high on the list because something like this, a match of this magnitude, has never been seen before, and it's going to create a historic outcome. And the segment that preceded it, which you will see in a second, give me a little bit, gave Paul Heyman an idea, or maybe even Roman an idea, to why not just make this a 6-man tag? Fuck the 2 different matches. Fuck having Roman and Drew in one match and then the RK Bro and the Usos in another match. Why don't we just make them a 6-man tag and unify everything in one foul swoop? Right? It makes sense. Especially if you already know that you're going to have the Usos win the unification bout. Why not at the end of that match just have all of the bloodline holding up all the titles? That's going to create a pretty dope image. And so Paul Heyman pretty much blackmailed Adam Pearce into making the match because he was just like, I'm going to go to the board of directors and file a complaint because you're going to deprive the crowd of seeing the tribal queef on television, on pay-per-view at Backlash. Like, how are you going to deprive the crowd, a pay-per-view crowd, of the tribal queef? Tribal queef, for those who don't watch the All Real Crew, that was the nickname that Tijon created for him. But we might as well move on to number 3 because number 3 is what created number 4. And it started with, that was an extra. He said Roman Reigns, Usos versus Drew McIntyre and RK Bro. But moving on to number 3, it started with what was supposed to be the contract signing for the unification tag title match between RK Bro and the Usos. And Riddle's dumbass was talking about, I can't tell the difference between the two. And so he was trying to figure out, he was trying to really understand why there was no distinction between the two. Like, why don't they have name tags or some dumb shit like that? And, you know, any wrestling fan, I was kind of astonished by that line choice, because any wrestling fan who's been watching for a few years knows exactly the difference between the two. And they both have different hairstyles. One has long hair with red dye, and the other one has a mohawk, a mullet type cut. You couldn't tell the difference between the two? I mean, pause. Jimmy has a mugshot out there too. I know he hadn't seen that. Riddle be playing dumb too much. I'm just saying. There's a lot of things you can use to distinguish Jimmy and Jay. I mean, I can tell based off of facial structure, because, you know, not all twins look exactly the same. I know a few sets of twins, and, you know, I was able to tell the difference between the two in like a week. You know what I mean? There's only been one set of twins that really stumped me, and I end up calling the one twin the other twin's name, and then they look at me like I'm crazy, I mean, I get where he's coming from, but like these two are definitely distinguishable. But I'm not even gonna rap about that too much. You know what I mean? Because Randy cleared that up for him, and he said, Jay is the right hand man, but Jimmy is the bitch. And so, just like any other real blank, Jimmy was not gonna let Randy slide and let him call him a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't gonna let you call me a bitch. I'm gonna smack the shit out you. And so a brawl ensued, and chaos ran amok. And as the tides were turning, and as Randy and Riddle started to gain momentum in this brawl, the tribal queef in his entrance music cued. And there he came, a-walking out to save his cousins with his special counsel called Heyman. Because with the bloodline, you're not going to make me look stupid. So, I got to come and save your ass. That's what Roman said. But nevertheless, he didn't even go into the ring at first. It was just enough to distract Randy and Riddle, and the Usos took back momentum in that brawl. Now, that is when Roman came in, ripped the initial contract between, or the initial contract for the unification match for the tag titles, shoves it in Riddle's mouth, and continues to beat the shit out of the both of them. And the both of them meaning RK Bro. A few moments later, that sword that everybody knows cued, and out comes Drew McIntyre to save RK Bro, who just last week made amends with Randy Orton, who we've known to be one of his biggest rivals in the past few years. And Randy said, we're good. McIntyre, Drew McIntyre was just like, or Riddle, I'll even backtrack. Riddle was playing peacemaker, as he always does, because he's the nice guy. He's the oblivious ignoramus. And, he's the good guy. He's always going to try to patch things up and play peacemaker. And so he did with these two. And Drew McIntyre pretty much was just like, anybody who calls the bloodline out on their BS is good with me. And Randy said, you're good with me. Hence why Drew McIntyre came out to save RK Bro. He gave Jey Uso a mean lariat and came in and started beating the shit out of Roman Reigns. And as the bloodline retreated, RK Bro and Drew McIntyre stood tall. Man, what a image. Fuck Riddle. Who would have ever thought Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton would be fighting side by side? If I told you 2 years ago, when they had their big rivalry over the WWE Championship, that at this moment in time they would be allies, you'd probably look at me like I'm crazy. And I wouldn't even be mad at you for that, because that would have been a very bold prediction. But nevertheless, this sets up a very, as I said, very momentous, historic six-man tag match that I will be paying very, very close attention to. But nevertheless, we're going to move on to number 2, and that is, to me, the best segment of the week. Because Randy has just now celebrated this past week, or the past couple weeks, 20 years with the WWE. Or technically it's been more than that, but because he was in OVW for a little bit, but 20 years on television on the main roster in WWE. And to open up Monday Night Raw this past Monday, Riddle started the show with a bunch of the Raw superstars surrounding the ring to honor Randy in his 20 years. And Riddle bought out a very, very close friend to Randy. Yes, for all my OG late 2000s WWE fans, that is right. Old legacy mate Cody Rhodes. And it was the first time the WWE Universe got to see Randy and Cody in the same ring in a long time. And it was good to see. It was very wholesome. Very wholesome legacy reunion. And no, Ted DiBiase Jr. was not there. And yes, I'm glad he wasn't. I'm sorry. I know that sounds fucked up, but he's good. He's good where he's at. But, of course, when Cody was embracing Randy, Cody's adversary right now, his opponent at Backlash, Seth Rollins, had to interrupt and was just like, whoa. Why are you making this all about you? This is not about you. This is to celebrate Randy. 20 years. 20 years of the past. And he went on to say that Randy is not the present. He's not even the future, because the future is the future is of the visionary, and that's Seth Rollins. And so one man to the next, Rollins was interrupted by Ezekiel. You know what the fuck I meant. Stop. Anyways, Ezekiel came out and didn't want to interrupt Seth because Seth was blabbering and talking about some bullshit. He interrupted because he wanted to introduce himself to one of his idols, one of the guys that him and his brother Elias watched when they were younger, and he cited Randy as one of his inspirations into getting into the business. And as Elias is talking, Ezekiel is talking, Kevin Owens comes out and is continuing to refute that Ezekiel is Ezekiel. He's still saying it's Elias. And honestly, I think Kevin Owens is doing some of his best work. Coming out and talking about, how could you disgrace the 20-year celebration of Randy Orton by coming out here and spewing these lies? You know what I mean? This is Elias right here. This shit is funny as fuck. I had to throw this on there. This is fucking Elias. But it's not. It's Ezekiel. I mean, look, different hair, no beard. I mean, they can I could tell it's Ezekiel. You know what I mean? But Kevin Owens is still not buying that shit. After Kevin Owens came out comes RK Bros' enemies, the Bloodline, the Usos, come out to celebrate Randy Orton. They want to tell him how much they have been influential for their careers. And, they asked each other, what was or what is the greatest moment of Randy Orton's career to them. And they said it's when they stand over top of RK Bro as the new unified WWE Tag Team Champions. And so out came Adam Pearce. And of course, when you look at this picture and WWE's past, all of this shit is to set up a big ass tag team match. They never fail when it comes to that. And so Adam Pearce came out and made it official that the four to your right, Cody Rhodes, RK Bro, and Ezekiel, would face the four to your left, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, and the Usos in the main event in the 8-man tag team match. That ended this segment was a RKO to Kevin Owens. This definitely was not the last RKO of the night. I mean, it's 20 years of Randy Orton. Randy is definitely landing at least a few RKOs before the night ends. And that will segue us to number one in a highly contested 8-man tag team match amongst these three competitors. 8-3. Shit. I'm so sorry. I just said it was an 8-man tag match, and I'm talking about some 3 competitors. Can you tell what time it is? Yeah, it's late. I'm going to be very transparent. It's late. So, in a very highly contested 8-man tag team match with these 8 competitors, at the end of the match, Randy Orton's going to have himself an RKO party. First starting off with Seth Rollins smacking Randy Orton and Cody coming to the rescue of his mentor, landing a disaster kick to Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins eats an RKO. Next up, Kevin Owens super kicks Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes was in the ring and he couldn't mind his business. And then he wanted to land a stunner on Randy Orton, but Ezekiel came to his rescue and gave him a nice little right to repay him for earlier in the night. And Kevin Owens got decked with an RKO, just like Seth did. And then next up, Jimmy Uso felt the need to interject, and Riddle came to his partner's rescue with one of his jumping knees that looked like they hurt. You know what I'm saying? And he hoisted Jimmy up. Riddle hoisted Jimmy up for an RKO that looked like, one of the 3Ds or the 1D as the Usos are starting to call it. And Jimmy got decked. His ass got decked with an RKO. And that's last but not least, Jey Uso came flying off the top rope. And guess what he got caught with? A motherfucking RKO. And that ended the match 1, 2, 3. And that ended the night. Was this image of the 4 competitors. See, I can count, motherfucker. Ezekiel, RK Bro, and Cody Rhodes were victorious to end the night. And it ended up being the best, to me, the best part of the week. Because I gotta give my respect to Randy Orton, the second guy that I love to hate. You know what I mean? Actually, matter of fact, there was a point in time where I feel like, to me, he might have been, he might have been the guy that I hated the most. I hated Triple H, but I hated this dude. I mean, like, he punted John Cena's dad in the head. I mean, he punted Vince. He kissed Stephanie. I mean, this dude did some diabolical shit. And he was just a guy that I genuinely hated. I think I loved to hate Triple H, but I actually hated Randy. I hated that motherfucker. But I have to marvel in his greatness, and I'm going to pay him his respects. I actually love Randy. I've loved Randy for the past... Actually, I started liking Randy as an adult because I started to really understand and I really got it. So, even though, granted, he was a face as I started to adult. But even after, when he became a heel, again, I understood. I got it. I picked it up. And so I like Randy. But nevertheless, the official Noah has counted it out. It is over. Old week finished. New week coming up. Next week, I'll give you the top 10 of the new week. You just got to tune in for it, bro. Like, comment, subscribe. Again, I encourage debate. If I left something off this week, leave it in the comments. If something should have been higher on the list, leave it in the comments. Let me know. I encourage all that type of interaction. Follow us on social media. The banners have been at the bottom the entire show. Follow us at TTR Wrestling on Instagram. Follow us at the All Real Crew on Instagram. Tune in every Saturday at 6 to watch me, Tijon, and Jamil break down the hottest rumors and news of WWE and MMA. Follow us on Twitter. Take it to the ring. But other than that, this is Noah here. And I done counted it out for you. I'll see you next week.